My name's Dan Duggan, and this is to do with my ideas on spirituality and how I see them in the modern world. I want to base it basically on what M.R. James was talking about. Montague Rhodes James was his name. He was a great medieval scholar, studied the early Christian Bible, and died in 1936. And I feel very close to him as an individual in that I have an enormous interest in intellectual ideas, thoughts on spirituality, but I also have an enormous caution around that notion of trying to claim that you know or believe you understand the workings of grace. So James was all about that. He did an awful lot of study, but he also posited the idea that if you try to place too much intellectual rigor on the workings of what you can't understand in yourself or in the outside world, it can land you in a lot of trouble. So he wrote a series of ghost stories on that. Many of them are absolutely terrifying, but the essence or the moral core of each one was that the academic inquiry of God or grace or spirituality could become very risky if it became prideful. In other words, if you became conceited and contempting what you couldn't understand either in yourself or outside. So the aspect of listening is primary here, and you can't force that listening. The only way that occurs is for you to be as you are. There is another excellent spiritual teacher called Adyashanti, and he talks about the idea of passing through states that we are fearful of and encountering what we can't understand. So it's a sort of yearning. He calls it a yearning, and I think James in his studies he yearned for an understanding or an academic understanding of what he was seeing, what he was reading, but he also had the aspect of being very open to suggestion. He was also very keen to be stepping back from that idea that he could just directly influence or interfere with or be conscious of what he wasn't fully aware of understanding. So there was a lot of doctrine, there's a lot of scripture, but in essence that's again coming back down to the intellectual inquiry is fine up to a point, and that's really the thing that I've learnt most in my life recently, in the last year and a half of living in a trading town called Brentford, which is in South, it's part of the, it's in Middlesex, which is for anyone watching this in the US, is in the, is sort of, it's around the London area, it's London Borough. It's a very give and take area, there's a lot of physicality to it, and there's depositories for books, and there's a lot of varying kinds of people. So it's been very, very useful to me because it's about taking everything as you find it, but taking nothing, and that is the essence of non-pushing for me. It's like when you start to say my consciousness, my understanding of my this, my that, when you place the word my, and this is to do with another guy called Paul Hederman, he talks about the claiming system. Well, in essence, we're all suffering from that all the time. I couldn't be talking like this if I wasn't claiming to know the English language. So if I say a milk bottle's a milk bottle, for me, that's what it is. If I sit next to somebody who comes from China who doesn't know English, and I point to a milk bottle and I say, there's the milk bottle, go and get yourself some milk. Unless I point a finger and direct him physically to where it is, if I just sat there and said, milk bottle, he wouldn't understand what I was talking about. For me, that is the aspect of claiming. And claiming is a linguistic thing. We have to have that to function. And the other thing that I think is important is to remember that we all have in ourselves an inherent nature to be necessarily dishonest. We couldn't always be honest. If we were scrupulously honest, I'd be sat next to someone I wanted to make friends with, and they'd say, I really like ice hockey. And I'd just say, I've got no interest in that whatsoever. None. Less than none. And then I wouldn't make a friend, yeah? So is tact coming into play, going, oh really, I don't know anything about ice hockey, could you tell me what it's about? So you're open to that. The point being, you might never watch ice hockey in the rest of your life, you might never see it again, you might have no interest in going on any sites to watch it, but by making that connection, by forging that common sense of understanding, you haven't ruled out the equation of friendship. So, you could say, I'm really interested in late 19th century literature, and he'd probably say, if he was going to be a friend, or she would say the same thing. Oh, really? That's interesting. And they'd probably never look at a book, that from that period. So there's no forcing anything, I think the aspect of common understanding is the most important thing, and that only comes from physicality. You have to be in a position to make a connection with something that may be challenging, and you may have to step away from that for a while or come back to it, but it yields an openness and an awareness that can be very painful. It's not all good, but it improves, and it comes from non-judgment, and it comes from conduct as well. It comes from common respect for other people. So yeah, that's it.